I am making a meal fit for kings. So I'm starting off with my country fried steak. So I have some cube steak here, salt and pepper on both sides. This dish, I'm gonna dredge it with flour, my house seasoning, shallow fry it in my cast iron skillet. Then I'm gonna make a simple table gravy to go on top. So I'm setting up my dredging station. In this pan, I'm going to put 2 cups of all-purpose flour and a little bit of my house seasoning, about 2 tablespoons. That's salt, pepper, onion powder, garlic powder, and paprika. That really does help enhance anything. In this pan, I'm gonna add some eggs and milk to help that flour adhere to the steak. 2 eggs and a cup of whole milk. I'm just whisking my eggs and milk together. Okay. Cube steak, flour first, then the egg and milk mixture, and then back into the flour for the last bit of coating. The double dredge just helps you get that extra bit of crunch and coating on your steak. Now I'm gonna make my gravy before I start frying. Melt some butter, make a roux. A roux is basically melting some fat, adding some flour, so it becomes a thickener for the gravy. So I'm using 2 tablespoons of butter and 2 tablespoons of baking drippings. Now, this is how my grandmother always made her gravy. You get the saltiness, the smokiness. I minced 2 cloves of garlic, a little salt, some black pepper, a 1/4 cup of flour, and this is the beginning of my roux. I don't want to cook this too dark, so I'm just melting down the butter and the flour until there's no lumps, and then I'm gonna slowly add some half and half. So when you think about a roux, you normally think about, it getting nice and dark, but I don't need to do that for this recipe. I just want the butter and the flour to come together to help thicken the sauce. This is where I would like to turn down the heat and just let it stay warm until it's time to serve. My oil is at 350. That's exactly the temperature that I want. I'm just gonna drop my first batch of steaks into my oil. This is a shallow fry in a cast iron. And I'm just gonna fry these until they're browned on each side. I have my oven temperature set to warm. That's about 200 to 250. And I'm gonna keep them warm until it's time to serve. So this is gonna fry for about 3 to 4 minutes or until it's golden brown, and then I'm gonna take it out and do my next batch. I'm flipping my steaks now because they're getting brown at the bottom, so I want the other side to get just as brown. So I'm just gently flipping them over. Oh, that color is so pretty. And you can kind of tell when they're close to being done because they start to float at the top. So that means that meat is pretty cooked inside. Just something about the sound of anything frying just gets me so excited. That's it. All right, so they are done. Oh my gosh, look how beautiful. My mom used to make some really good smothered chicken growing up. So I'm making my version of a Carolina smothered chicken. Can you season the chicken with my house seasoning?
What's in here?
Onion powder, garlic powder, salt, paprika, and pepper. And while you do that, just season, you know how to season chicken.
Yes.
After my mom seasons the chicken, she's gonna dredge it with a little flour and the same house seasoning. Fry it not all the way through. You wanna smother and cook the chicken in the sauce. But you want it to get nice and crispy. That looks good.
That's pretty.
That is very pretty. To make this pan sauce, I'm gonna add some butter. I've left a little bit of the oil from the fried chicken, onions. I'm gonna saute this down.
Garlic.
Some minced garlic. Salt. Pepper. That smells good, huh?
Yes.
And now I'm gonna add my spices. Some dried mustard, about a teaspoon of that. A half a teaspoon dried rosemary. I'm only using a half a teaspoon because it's much more pungent than using fresh herbs.
Okay.
Then I'm using a half a teaspoon of dried thyme. Chicken stock. Now I'm going to use a third cup of stock, and I'm just going to let some of that stock evaporate.
As it cooks and boils up, then it's
reducing.
Yeah.
I'm gonna add 2 tablespoons of Dijon mustard. It's gonna give it that tang and that pale yellow color. Now I'm gonna whisk in about 1.5 cups of heavy cream. Slowly.
Wow, it's thickening up as soon as it hits the heat. Oh, it smells so good.
What I like to do now is add the chicken back in. For color, I'm just adding a little bit of fresh parsley. Kind of like that contrast between dried and fresh herbs.
How pretty is that?
Okay. All right, so I'm gonna let this go for another 25 to 30 minutes with the top on. Oh, that's pretty. You ready to eat?
Yes.
All right, let's get this plated. I'm making deviled eggs, but they're not any old plain deviled eggs. I'm adding a fried shrimp on top. I am going to let my shrimp sit in the buttermilk and then get started on my egg. Okay, so I have a little bit of salt and pepper that I'm adding to this bowl, which has some buttermilk in it. I have about a pound of Charleston white shrimp that I have peeled and deveined. Putting it in the buttermilk helps that coating adhere to the shrimp because, I mean, shrimp doesn't have skin on it, so it needs something to help it stick, and that's what that buttermilk does. Now, if you don't live in a coastal area like I do, you can always use frozen. Just make sure it's thawed. Make sure it's nice and coated with that buttermilk. I have 12 extra large hard-boiled eggs here. I'm gonna use a food processor to make my filling. So I'm just gonna dump the yolk in there, and then I have this cute little tray here that I'm gonna put each half on. All right, so for the rest of the ingredients in here, I have my egg yolk. I'm gonna add a little mayo, it's a really good mayo. A little yellow mustard. You gotta have that yellow mustard in there. A little sour cream, some sweet relish, a little salt, a pinch of my house seasoning. You don't want to make it too salty. And some freshly cracked black pepper. All right, so I'm just going to turn this on until it becomes smooth. I like putting my yolk mixture in the food processor because I pipe this out into each individual half, so it comes out really, really smooth. All right, so I have a jar here to help keep that nice and sturdy while I add my yolk. Yummy. I have a star tip on my piping bag. Hear my grandma and my mom talking right now. Don't you waste that, get all of that out of there. So I'm just piping this. So I'm starting off like that, kind of holding my bag not too tight because I don't want too much to come out at one time, and just gliding it up just like that. It's gonna be like the bed for my fried shrimp. Those look beautiful. Now I'm going to dredge and fry my shrimp. I'm going to combine 1 cup of all-purpose flour, about a half a cup of yellow cornmeal, and that's going to make it really crunchy. A little seafood seasoning, and a little extra pinch of salt. Mix it all together. Taking my shrimp that has been sitting in that buttermilk and just dredging, and I dredge the tail as well. All right, I have my oil heated to 350. I'm gonna fry these in batches until they're golden brown. This is gonna be my first batch. Now, shrimp does not take long to cook, 3 to 4 minutes. I have some neutral oil here, some canola oil. You can use vegetable if you'd like. I stick between canola and vegetable oil. Give that about 3 or 4 minutes. Ooh, these are pretty. All right, I believe these are done. Look how pretty they are. And let me tell you something. You'll know if you've overcooked shrimp if they get a really, really tight curl. I'm gonna build myself an egg. Oh, that's really good. It's delicious. Hey guys, it's Kardea Brown and welcome to my home kitchen here on Edisto Island, South Carolina. We are making Southern chicken and dumplings today. It is a chicken and vegetable stew with pillowy soft chive dumplings on top. You ready to cook? Let's go. So we have our Dutch oven here heated to medium-high heat. If you do not have a Dutch oven, you can use a large deep pot. Let's take 4 tablespoons of unsalted butter and melt it into our pot. While that's melting, let's talk about our chicken. I have 6 boneless, skinless chicken thighs here. Just a pinch of salt and pepper on both sides. My mom used to use whole chicken cut into pieces, but today in this class, we're using boneless, skinless chicken thighs. Let's wash our hands. Our butter is melted. Let's add in our chicken. And I like using boneless, skinless chicken thighs because it's easier to shred at the end. We're gonna let this sear on one side for 3 minutes. While that's searing, let's go over to our cutting board. So for our vegetables, we have carrots, celery, and an onion. All right, let's chop our carrots. I'd say let's cut them about a ½ inch thick. If you like bigger chunks of carrot, you can do that as well. Put your carrots into a bowl. Now we have our celery. And we're going to cut our celery the same. About a ½ inch thick. All right, guys, let's turn our chicken. The chicken should be brown on this side, and it is. Your pot may create a hot spot. I see that this side of the pot is a little hotter, so let's just rotate. Take the more brown pieces and move them to the back. Okay. While that's cooking on this side, let's go back to our cutting board. Let's chop the rest of our celery. Line up your celery stalks together and just dice this way. Keeping those fingers tucked. Use the back of your knife to scrape. Never use this side of your knife. You will dull your knife. Okay. All right, gather up your celery, put it into the bowl with your carrots. Let's not forget about our onion. Okay. We're gonna dice our onion a little smaller than the carrot and the celery. Okay, put your onions in a bowl. Let's head back to the stove. Okay, let's check on our chicken. Should be golden brown on both sides, and they are. So let's remove the chicken and put it on a tray. What we're going to do now is cook our vegetables in the remnants of the chicken. I don't know about you, but this kitchen smells amazing. Okay. So you may have noticed some of your butter may have burnt off. That's okay. You can add 2 more tablespoons of butter. That to melt. What we want to do here is loosen up some of that brown stuck on stuff because that's where all the seasoning and flavor is. Okay. Let's take our veggies and put it into our Dutch oven. Okay. Give it a mix and make sure you're scraping as you mix, getting up all of that stuck on flavor. Let's add a little bit more salt and pepper. Generous pinch. All right. Give it a mix, and we're going to let this cook for 3 more minutes. What we're doing here is just cooking until the onion turns slightly translucent. Remember, this is a soup, so a lot of the cooking is going to happen once we add in our liquid. And you want to keep stirring at this point because you don't want your onions to stick to your pot. Stir, scrape, stir and scrape. That looks good to me. Let's grab our flour. You should have 2 tablespoons. Put it into your pot. The flour is going to help thicken up our soup. Give it a stir. While this softens, let's head back to our cutting board and chop 2 cloves of garlic. I like adding garlic at this point because garlic loses its intensity the longer you cook it. So I like adding in garlic right before the liquid goes into our pot. Okay, we're just giving it a rough chop. Nothing fancy, guys. All right, let's take our garlic back to the pot. Add your garlic to the pot, give it a stir. Ooh, you see, as soon as that garlic hits the fat and the butter and the heat, wow, it smells amazing. Let's add in 6 cups of chicken stock. Bring it to a slight boil, so you may have to turn up the heat on your pot. Give it a stir. Loosen up any of that stuck on goodness from the sides. I like to use my wooden spoon and do that. Let's add in our bay leaf. 1 should do the trick. Okay, let's add our chicken back to the pot. And what my mom always loved to do, get some of that chicken juice and put it right in the pot. Oh, that looks pretty, guys. All right, hit pause and meet me back here once your stock is boiled. All right, our stock is boiling. Let's reduce the heat and allow this to simmer for 45 minutes. While this is simmering, let's go over and make our chive dumplings. We have 1 cup of all-purpose flour. Level it off with your finger. Add it to your bowl. 1 teaspoon of baking powder. And a 1/2 teaspoon of kosher salt. Give it a whisk. Let's add in 2 tablespoons of vegetable shortening, and you can cut that in with a fork. You want to cut in your shortening with the fork until your shortening turns into the size of a pea. Let's add in our buttermilk. You should have 2/3 cup of buttermilk. Okay, give it a whisk. All right, let's dice a bunch of chives. Okay, you want to dice them fairly fine. This is a little different from my mom's recipe. She didn't use chives, but I love the oniony flavor of a chive. Okay, right, that should be about 2 tablespoons. Add it to your bowl. Okay. Let's fold in our chives. And you just want to fold until your chives are thoroughly incorporated. Okay. That looks good to me. Hit pause and meet me back at the stove when 45 minutes is up. All right, so it's been 45 minutes. Let's remove our top and shred the chicken. I like to shred the chicken with 2 forks, that's it. Make sure your heat is turned down to low. And your chicken should easily shred with a fork. I like to shred my chicken pretty much completely. I like to leave some chunks of chicken, but make sure that most of your chicken is shredded. And you can do this to your liking. A little chunky, a little shredded, you know, a good mixture of both. Okay, that looks good. Now let's drop in our dumpling mixture. I like to spray my spoons with a little cooking spray before adding in this dumpling mixture. That will help the dumpling fall right into your soup. Look, that's it, nothing left on the spoon. And these don't have to be perfect. My mom's dumplings were never perfect, but they taste amazing. I'm gonna try to get about 6 to 8 dumplings out of this mixture. It just depends on you and how big you like your dumplings, but this mixture should yield about 6 to 8 dumplings, medium size. We're gonna cover the pot and let it go for an additional 15 minutes. Pause and meet me back here when it's ready. All right, so it's been 15 minutes. Let's check on our chicken and dumplings. Oh, wow, look at that. Smells incredible. All right, let's head over and serve this in a bowl. Wow. All right, before we put our chicken and dumplings into a bowl, this is what I like to do. I like to add a little bit more greenery on top. So I'm gonna take some fresh parsley and give it a rough chop. Just adds a pop of color to your bowl. Grab your bowl and a ladle. I like to grab the meat and the soup first and then put my dumplings on top. Oh, I'm getting real hungry. Got my little dumpling right there. I think I can put one more in there. All right. Let's get your parsley and just sprinkle on top. Let's give it a taste. Make sure you blow it off. It may be a little hot. Takes me back to my childhood. Incredible. It's well seasoned. The chives and the dumplings, they're just melt in your mouth. You get some of that oniony flavor. You get the robust flavor of the veggies, the carrots, the celery. The chicken thighs just adds another layer of flavor in there. This is what you call chicken and dumplings. Chow Chow is a Southern relish. I love it. I put it on everything, my hot dogs, my burgers, and now I'm gonna put it on my pulled pork sandwich. I'm gonna start off with 5 cups of vinegar. I'm gonna use 3 cups of granulated sugar, 2 tablespoons of salt, a tablespoon of mustard seeds, teaspoon of turmeric. The turmeric adds bright, vibrant yellow color. red pepper for a little heat, about a handful of cloves, as well as the whole peppercorn, 1 bay leaf, a squirt of yellow mustard, and that's basically it. All right, I'm gonna head over to my stove and give this a whisk. Smells great already. All right, now for the vegetable part. Green tomatoes, bell pepper, onions, and a cabbage. To make life easier, I'm gonna use a food processor. All right, so I'm gonna do this in batches because if I put too much in the food processor, it's gonna get really liquidy. I wanna avoid that. Take my first batch out. Quick pulses. Now I'm gonna hand shred my cabbage. Chow chow is like a mix between a coleslaw and a relish because I'm using cabbage. I'm using the entire cabbage. Normally if you make steamed cabbage, you would throw away that center because it's really rough and bitter. But because I'm adding it to a relish, I like to use it because it's really, really strong and it holds up really well in the relish. Go over here and add it to my vinegar and pickling spices. Let that go for about 15 to 20 minutes until most of the liquid has absorbed.
The sandwich is awesome, man.
I'm making fried shrimp with my mom's famous French fries, but I'm going to make the seasoning for my fried shrimp. I call this my Gullah seasoning. I'm using a lot of paprika, almost 4 tablespoons of that. For the color, smokiness, 2 teaspoons of oregano, 2 teaspoons onion powder, a little bit of cayenne, not too spicy, 2 teaspoons garlic powder. You know what? I love garlic powder. Another little teaspoon. White pepper, thyme, and this Gullah seasoning will go great on poultry. I'm adding some basil. You can also use it on your vegetables. It's universal, and that's exactly why I made it. Gullah is a term used to describe the African American people here in the Low Country. We're a distinct group of African Americans, and our food definitely speaks to our West African ancestry. And I add a little bit of sugar just to balance out some of that cayenne that I use. A few pinches of salt, a few cracks of pepper. All right, that's done. I'm gonna get started on my dredge. Got a bowl for my wet, got a bowl for my dry. I'm just gonna start with 2 cups of flour in my dry, my Gullah seasoning. I'm just gonna use all of the buttermilk. When you dredge, keep one hand clean, keep one hand messy. Drop it in the buttermilk, drop it in the dredge. I can't wait till Mom gets here. She's the reason why I cook. Before I get started, I want to check the temp on my oil. You want to make sure that it's at a temperature between 360 and 375. Be mindful to go one at a time because if you drop it all in at one time, they're going to clump together, okay? Woo! Music to my ears. Don't overcrowd your pot. Otherwise, it will boil over. Move it around. Make sure it doesn't stick to the bottom. And I'm looking for that golden brown color. Not too dark, not too light. That's it. That's the color I'm looking for. That's the firmness I'm looking for. It's ready to come out. And do this fast. Don't hurt yourself, but work quickly. You want a nice, even color. First batch is done. Mommy! Just in time?
Ooh, let me make some fries to go with them shrimps. What you think?
Remember, growing up, you would make the steak fries. I'm here to assist you in my kitchen.
Okay. Well, we got my seasoning.
My mom has washed 2 russet potatoes, cut it up. She's adding the russet potatoes to the bowl with a little bit of that Gullah seasoning, and she's now adding flour to begin tossing. So the flour is going to give it that nice coating and that crunch we want at the end. Okay.
Okay, you know what? I really, truly need a bag.
This work?
Yes, that'll work.
My mom always used a bag.
Okay, is the oil ready?
The oil's nice and hot.
All right, so I'm just gonna drop them in there and just let them stay in there for about 10 minutes and we should be good to go.
All All right, Ma, these look good to you?
Yeah, yeah. You can tell because they're like kind of brownish there. They're good. They're good.
They are beautiful.
You know what's good?
What?
Sprinkle a little bit more in this while it's hot on the fries.
Okay, Ma, with the tidbits. Pat's facts for the day.
There you are.
I like it. Shrimp and grits is a staple item in the Low Country, especially at brunch. You can eat it brunch, breakfast, dinner, whatever. We eat shrimp and grits all day long. While my bacon is frying, I'm going to get started on my grits. I'm using old-fashioned grits, 2 cups. Old-fashioned grits are less processed than quick grits, so it takes a little longer to cook. These are the grits that my grandmother grew up on. She still uses old-fashioned grits. I like quick grits. I mean, of course, because if you're in a rush, quick grits can cook within like 5 minutes, but old-fashioned grits take about 20 minutes to cook. And the reason I whisk the grits as I pour it in, because grits lump up very quickly. If you serve a lumpy grit to anybody in the South, your name will be the talk of the town. Once it starts to boil, you'll bring it down to a simmer, and if you don't salt your water now, you'll have some really bland grits at the end. Well, you see me over here getting started on this shrimp and grits.
Yes,
I need your help.
Okay.
Okay, just wash your hands.
You got my help.
You can smell it all the way down the street, right?
I know.
Can you help me with the,
Of course
the
I
onions?
can. Teamwork makes the dream
I know
work.
that's right.
It smells so good in here, Kardea. This girl is making my favorite.
You know, I was thinking, where did shrimp and grits come from?
Definitely Charleston, but you know, everybody makes shrimp and grits so different, you know. And I think we all just added our own flavor. You have to have fresh shrimp.
How can you eat shrimp and grits without Charleston shrimp?
Girl, I don't care if you got to go out in the creek all day long. I'm telling you, you need fresh shrimp with shrimp and gravy. Yeah, I think people actually want to take the quick way out, but because I love cooking, I like to take the great way out.
All right.
Yes, yes.
Slow way is the great way.
I think we got enough onions before I start boo-hooing in here, girl.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, that's enough.
Yes.
This pan is nice and brown, so that's going to give me a good dark gravy. You put that in there?
Yes, I'll go ahead and add that in for you. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's going to make a really good gravy right there. That's actually the biggest key to making it as well.
You got to get that pan nice and dirty.
Yes.
And I need a little bit of flour. Can you stir around the grits for me, too?
I sure can.
Thank you.
Kardea, what kind of grits do you use?
I'm using old-fashioned grits today.
Oh, really?
Using old-fashioned grits, it just holds up a lot better. You know, it's nice and thick.
If the grits is thicker, then I won't need extras.
No, you're right,
I won't need a second help.
Right.
You know?
Because it'll stick to your bones. That's what a girl
I
says.
used to tell my children, honey, it's going to stick to your gizzard.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
Oh, yeah, this is coming along really good. That looks good over there, Kardea.
Yeah, it's coming together.
Okay, look at you.
See, I learned a thing or two. Y'all taught me well.
You did, I'm telling you. It looks really good.
Just gonna cook this down till the onions get a little translucent. And while I do that, can you put a little flour in the shrimp and some salt, pepper, and garlic powder? We like to add flour to our shrimp just to get it a little crispy.
I love brunch. I eat brunch every single day.
And you make a good hefty brunch.
Yes, I do.
You do.
You have some left over for dinner.
Sometimes the oil will cook out of the onions in the skillet. It's okay to add a little bit more. I'm using canola oil. I'm gonna brown the shrimp, and that's where you get the distinguished color of Gullah shrimp.
Did you remember to freeze the ice cubes, the coffee ice cubes? Yeah.
What are we doing with that?
Well, don't worry about that. I just want to make sure that you did it.
Okay, I did it. Stir up the grits when you
I sure can.
You know, we can't have any lumps in that grits.
That's right.
Add some water to this pot now. That's when the gravy begins.
I love the sound of sizzle.
With Gullah food and low country food, we like to build layers of flavor.
Yes.
So, you know, a lot of our food, it's a process.
You want to take your time on something like this, you know?
I've always just known how to make shrimp and grits Gullah style, but what do you think makes it Gullah?
The brown gravy. Yes.
Try that.
Girl.
Make sure that brown gravy is right.
I love the onion flavor, the garlic in there. I love it. Now, what's going to really set it off is when you add the bacon. Yes.
Take the same bacon that I use to get that bacon grease in the beginning. All those flavors, the bacon, the shrimp, the gravy.
It's going to really boost that taste.
Everything's ready.
Ooh, that looks so good.
I'm ready to eat. Can you cut up some green onions for
I
me?
sure can. I came hungry.
Okay.
Like very hungry.
I'll give you a good serving.
Please do.
And look how thick and creamy slides right off the spoon.
Oh, yes. That plate is too cute.
You did good, girlfriend. You hungry?
Do you really have to ask that?
Let's go.
Let's go eat. Can't wait to try this. Party, hey. It's nice and creamy. The seasoning is just perfect. You love it.
Kiana travels a lot, so I know she wants a good down-home, low-country meal, so I'm making her some Gullah Gumbo. In our culture, stews are very light, bright, tomatoes, veggies, things like that. So my gumbo is gonna have that, but it's gonna start with that traditional base, what they call in New Orleans the Trinity. I guess it's the Trinity in our culture too. So Gullah cooking is all about one-pot dishes. It's about evoking flavor with little to nothing. And the reason for that was to make something that could last. A soup can go a long way. A stew can go a long way. I'm gonna head over to my stove here and make the roux. And a roux is just basically flour and some type of fat. It thickens it up, it gives it flavor, it gives it color. I got about a cup of canola oil. You need an oil with a high smoke point because it burns quickly. And the thing about a roux is you gotta stand by that pot. 1 cup of flour. Break down the oil in the flour. I have my Dutch oven on about a medium-high heat. And what I'm doing right now is actually burning the flour and the oil. I know that sounds crazy, but that's the start of a roux. You gotta brown it. But for Gullah Gumbo, it's gonna be on the lighter side because I'm not cooking the roux as long, but it's still gonna have lots of flavor. And I'm starting to see that peanut butter color that I'm looking for. And it's just basically that flour is just, you know, browning with the oil. So keep scraping. And if you start to see that it's burning a little too quickly, turn your heat down just a little bit. And we're almost there. All right, I'm gonna add my veggies in now and cook my veggies down with the roux. Look at that. Ooh. What I like to do right now is start adding in my spices. A few pinches of salt, black pepper. And because it wouldn't be me if I didn't add my house seasoning, some smoked paprika, onion powder, garlic powder. All right, so I'm adding a pinch of mace. Mace is almost like nutmeg. It smells like nutmeg, it's very bright. And if you can't find mace, you can always use nutmeg. A pinch of gumbo filet. Gumbo filet is ground sassafras plant, all right? I'm gonna add 2 bay leaves in there. Now I'm gonna grab my garlic and tomatoes. And I like to add in my garlic and tomatoes at this point because I don't wanna cook out that garlic flavor. I want it to be really pronounced in the gumbo. And tomatoes cook down fairly quickly, so I like to add it in at this point as well. Now for the liquid. I'm gonna add in about 3 cups of seafood stock. So just about this whole box, leave a cup. I'm also adding about 3 cups of chicken stock. And the reason I'm mixing the stocks is because I'm adding smoked turkey and I'm also adding seafood. Gotta add the shrimp. It wouldn't be Gullah if I didn't. All right, I'm gonna bring this to a rolling boil. I'm gonna also add smoked turkey wing. My grandmama and them always added some type of smoked meat to help enhance the flavor of whatever stew they're making. Okay, so I'm gonna let this go, uncover, just let it simmer. After an hour, I'm gonna add the lima beans. I'm gonna let the lima beans cook up in this. And then last but not least, you know I'm gonna throw in some shrimp. Of course, I'm gonna add traditional Gullah crab rice to the top of that gumbo. I'm gonna heat up 2 cups of chicken stock because it infuses flavor into the rice. This is about half of this box. For every 1 cup of rice, you use 2 cups of liquid. And it's important to rinse your rice. Let me tell you why. You gotta get that starch off the rice. Once my water runs clear, you know you got most of the starch off. My stock has come to a boil. I'm gonna add my rice, bring it down to a simmer and cover it. All right, while that goes for about 15 minutes, I'm gonna cut up my Trinity. Got a tomato I'm gonna use a little later, and of course, garlic. Crab rice tastes just like it sounds. It's crab meat and rice. Now we like to use blue crab claw meat because it evokes more of that crabby flavor. If you want to be traditional, you gotta use claw meat. And if you want to go old school, you'll sit there and crack some blue crabs and add that meat into the rice. That's how my great grandparents used to do it. Okay, got about half of this bell pepper that I'm dicing up finally. All right, add it to this bowl. And I got 1 clove of garlic, of course. Y'all know I like my garlic. You know what, to make life easier, I'm just gonna add the garlic to the veggies right there. Right now, there's so much flavor going on here. Everything is just gonna meld together and it's gonna be awesome. Let's get this veggie sauteed. What I like to do is start my crab rice with a little butter and oil. I like to use the combination of 2 types of fat. Butter has a little bit more water content. So to really get a nice fry on my veggies, I like to add oil. And while that's getting hot, it's been about 15 minutes. Let's see if the rice is done. My rice is nice and fluffy. Let me tell you another secret to getting the perfect fluffy rice. After it's done, you turn the heat off, put your top back on, and let it steam off the heat. Your rice will be nice and fluffy and not overcooked. Let me add the onions, the garlic, and the celery. A little salt to draw out some of that water. Ooh, smells so good. All right, so I'm just cooking it till it gets a little softened and the onions turn translucent. I'm gonna take my rice, add the rice to the pot. My grandmother and my mom, they call everything in the house a pot. Even though it's a pan, it's a pot. Get all the crusty stuff. We're almost like making fried rice. Turn my heat down just a little bit. I'm gonna grab my crab meat. This is a pound of crab claw meat. To really get that crab flavor, you gotta use the claw meat. I'm gonna grab some of my house seasoning, 2 heavy pinches of that. And last but not least, tomatoes. A pop of freshness. It's gonna also give it a pop of color. Crab meat, rice, bell pepper. I tell you, this is a meal in itself. Let me close this up right now because I tell you, I'm about to sit down and eat a bowl of that by itself. So this has been going on for about an hour. Let me add my lima beans. Ooh, what is Gullah Gumbo without lima beans? Every stew, every soup my grandmother makes, she adds lima beans. And that's why I add lima beans to my gumbo. This turkey is starting to loosen up a little bit. I'm gonna pull that turkey apart and it's gonna be a part of the meat too. The color is beautiful. Those lima beans look great. I got a pound of shrimp that I've cleaned, deveined it, deshelled. And had I put the shrimp in earlier in the process, it just would have been overcooked. And who wants tough shrimp? No, 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 no. Now I'm gonna take my turkey wing out and shred it and put it back into my Gullah Gumbo. Not only do you get a bite of shrimp, you're also gonna get a little bite of smoked turkey. I'm gonna put the bone back in there with the shredded meat. Red rice is a staple in the Gullah community. So Gullah people are direct descendants of West African people. So a lot of our food is very similar to West African food. Red rice is basically a rice that's cooked with some form of tomato paste, tomato sauce, or fresh tomatoes. I like to use tomato paste because I find that it makes a drier red rice. So I'm starting off with 1 large white onion that I've diced. I'm dicing 1 bell pepper. Typically, red rice is cooked with some type of smoked meat. I like to use a popular smoked sausage that we use here in Charleston. This smoked sausage is like a kielbasa. It's fully cooked, so it's just gonna add that nice smoky flavor. Right, so I'm gonna add a 1/4 cup of vegetable oil. I'm gonna add my sausage and bell pepper, get that nice and hot and sauteed. Red rice is something that can get soggy very easily. So I've learned over the years, bake it. And you gotta bake it with parboiled rice. Parboiled rice, which is rice that has been dried and steamed in its husk, it will never, ever, ever get soggy. And once you pop it in the oven and let it cook and don't bother that lid, you are going to have the best red rice of your life. You can get parboiled rice at any supermarket. It's usually right next to your regular rice. Let that cook up a little bit. I'm gonna get my tomato paste started. Tomato paste is a concentrated form of tomatoes, so it really makes the rice red. And you get that big burst of tomato flavor. The color, the smell, the smoked sausage, oh my goodness. Want to sprinkle in some sugar. Gullah cooking is always more sweet than it is spicy. Garlic powder, you know I love my garlic. 2 cups of parboiled rice that I've rinsed, got some of that starch off. Give it a mix. It may look soggy, but honey, once you put it in that oven, I promise you, you're gonna have some really nice, fluffy, dried red rice. I'm gonna add a little water on top because as the rice cooks in the oven, it does start to absorb some of that tomato paste, so I wanna make sure that none of the rice on top gets crispy. Oven's preheated to 350. I'm gonna let it cook for about 35 to 40 minutes. Let me check on my red rice. All right. Whew, sensory overload. I'm just fluffing it at this point. It's still a little bit on the wet side, and that's okay. That's what fluffing is for. You getting a whiff of this?
Yeah, man.
Okay. Now I want to get started on Grandma's mac and cheese. This is an old school Southern way of making macaroni and cheese. There's no fuss. It is fail proof, and I have to make it for Grandma this Thanksgiving. I have cooked 1 pound of elbow macaroni till it's al dente. That means it still has a little bite to it. You don't want to overcook your noodles because it'll get really soggy in the oven because you have to continue to cook it in the oven. So you want to cook it till it's just al dente. That means it's still a little stiff. 1 stick of unsalted melted butter. I have 6 eggs. The first thing I ever learned how to make by myself was my grandma's macaroni and cheese. I was at my sister's house, and you guys have probably heard the story before. We were all cooking, and like everyone has to make their own dish. So they assigned me macaroni and cheese. Little do they know I'd never cooked before, at least by myself without adult supervision. And I said, I'll make the macaroni and cheese. And I'm like, oh Lord, how do I make the macaroni and cheese? I called my grandma. I was like, Grandma, I'm making your macaroni and cheese. What do I need to put in it? Well, she's like, well, who's letting you cook in that kitchen? I said, Arlene. And she said, okay, well, if you have to make it, put a little egg and evaporated milk. The canned milk is what she called it, canned milk. And if they have some of that heavy cream around, if you want it a little richer, you use the heavy cream and you season your noodles and stuff with salt, pepper, garlic powder, and you shred up your cheese. So I just remember what she said, and I remembered what I watched basically my entire childhood. And I just prayed to the gods above, please just guide me through this macaroni and cheese because I don't want them to talk about me. So I made the macaroni and cheese, and it was a hit. A hit. So I've been making it this way ever since. I do have my other versions, but this right here is my go-to. So I have 6 eggs in this bowl that I've combined with 2 cans of evaporated milk, a teaspoon of garlic powder, seasoned with a little salt and pepper. I like a lot of freshly cracked black pepper. Pour my egg and milk mixture into my casserole dish that I've sprayed with nonstick spray and my noodles. Give it a mix. And remember, I have that melted butter in there as well. Okay. 2 cups of heavy cream. Have some cubed sharp cheddar here. Now, back when my grandmother used to make this, and I would be her little helper, she wouldn't let me cut the cheese, but she would let me put the cheese from her cutting board into a bowl, and she'll turn around and she's like, well, did you put the cheese in the bowl? And by the time she turns around, the cheese was gone. I would eat this. That was my duty. Hand shredded extra sharp cheddar cheese, about 1.5 pounds. That extra sharp gives it a little extra tang. The trick to making creamy and cheesy Southern baked macaroni and cheese is to make sure that your noodles are swimming in milk and cheese. You don't want to see any exposed noodles. No naked noodles. Before I cover this, I'm gonna sprinkle with more cheese on top to get a nice even layer of cheese. This looks incredible. I have my oven preheated to 350. I'm gonna bake this off for about 40 minutes or until it gets nice and bubbly in the inside, and then I'm gonna take the foil off and let it cook for an additional 10 to 15 minutes or until the top is browned. And what I also like to do is spray my aluminum foil with a little nonstick spray so that cheese doesn't stick. That's a trick Grandma taught me. Oh my goodness. My grandmother is gonna be proud of me. Now that's how you bake a macaroni and cheese.